Hi, welcome to the session. We're going to be covering revolutionizing the SOC using AI. I'm Chris Hosking. I'm AI and cloud security evangelist for SentinelOne. We got a lot to cover today, so it's going to be a little bit fast and furious. So apologies if I get a little bit too Vin Diesel-esque here. To start off with, broadly, I wanted to share my view of AI, and I'm going to do so with a brilliant quote from the author of The Little Prince, which is that the machine doesn't isolate you from the problems of nature, it plunges you more deeply into them. And I think I'm just using that as a complicated way to say, I think of AI as an accelerant. I don't think it's inherently good or bad. I do think it is incumbent upon us to maximize the potential of the opportunity in front of us with AI, which is why I wanted to have this conversation about how can we revolutionize the SOC with AI. I do want to first talk a little bit about the AI threat landscape, just to position things, and also because I'm nerdy and I love talking about this kind of stuff. We've seen a tremendous amount of headlines and a lot of fear-mongering, to be honest, about the risks of AI and AI-powered attacks specifically. It's common to see headlines like the ones I have up on the screen, of even our institutions warning us of threats ahead and of threats current. So I wanted to cover, historically, AI-powered attacks have been rather weak. Parscan and probabilistic context-free grammar crackers. I always never get PCFG, so I'm glad I did it in one there. They're actually slower than non-AI and ML-powered password crackers. Malgan wasn't that effective in terms of feed-forward neural networks, and Deep Locker, while it was interesting, didn't really have any use cases. And Malgan and Deep Locker were both POCs that were kind of never were seen in the wild, any versions of them either. In terms of POCs, there have been some more interesting ones lately, especially by the team over at HiAs. Love the work that these guys do. Specifically, they did two projects. They did one called Black Mamba, which was it was a keylogger, but it had polymorphic capabilities of actually redesigning itself in real time, relying on LLMs, in this case, ChatGPT. They followed that up with what they call iSpy, which was a cognitive threat agent, which was actually deciding on redesigning its own malicious code within the context of the environment that it found itself in. Like, for example, should someone start a recording or someone start writing into Word, developing code that would listen in on the microphone or developing code that would take screenshots. Really interesting, but again, both of these are POCs. What is really happening is some adversaries making use of LLMs, mostly for just accelerating their capabilities, as we all have begun to use LLMs. Mostly phishing, social engineering, really quick publication of mis and disinformation, localization and translation. That's not just languages, that's also code as well, like moving something into Rust, for example. Here's just a couple screenshots of some headlines of Fraud GPT, of Worm GPT, of Wolf GPT, of Evil GPT. They have the kind of names that you'd expect, right? I do want to really briefly talk about the threat sort of marketing ecosystem around these. You see how quickly it goes from bringing up popular hackers from fiction, from Mr. Robot there, right? To monetizing these particular tools. It is, at the end of the day, an opportunity for people to capture on the hype of AI to make money and sell these tools. Inherently, people aren't building these out of a malicious intention to use them, but more often a malicious intention to make money. But that also being said, we're seeing scammers scam the scammers, right? No honor amongst thieves. We're even seeing within the ecosystem of malicious LLMs, scams starting to happen. And we got a couple examples on the screen here. I think one of the more interesting uses of AI within the threat landscape was something called Predator AI. At SentinelOne, one at Sentinel Labs, which is our research arm. We've got some phenomenal reporting on this. I really recommend you check out Alex's blog on this. essentially, predator AI is one of those collections of tools where there's a number of different things that are possible. And what they've done is they've added in a chat interface for you to navigate which tools to use at what point within their set of hacking tools, essentially. Here's an example of it in use. I've blocked out a little bit of profanity that was specific to the some of the tensions that are in the Middle East currently, but it's being used in the wild. This particular tool set that has that ChatGPT powered interface for you to navigate their tool set. So if we've covered the threat landscape, let's now talk about the opportunity for SOCs. Of course, I think this is going to be well understood by our audience today. SOC is inherently unbalanced in almost all organizations that I talk to because of that asymmetry that exists within cybersecurity. Defenders are thinly spread. The amount of alerts, the amount of false positives, the struggles of talent and skill shortage, the complexity of the environments we're protecting, facing attackers with a clear mindset, diminishing timeframes, increased sophistication, and a larger attack surface than they've ever had access to before, right? Now, will AI break this SOC with the kind of threats that I've just talked about in brief? I don't think so at all. I think the opportunity is really on the side of the defenders. If anything, I think we've got our largest potential probably since the advent of technologies like EDR six or 7 years back to really upset the balance between defenders and attackers. I think we've got an opportunity to rapidly accelerate timeframes, to boost skills, and to sort of fight all of the things in where we're losing. In terms of an AI-powered proposal for boosting SOC, when I'm talking about revolutionize the SOC using AI, there's 3 main things that I want to talk about. I want to talk about autonomous enterprise protection, solving the data problem, and then autonomous threat analysis and assistance. Now, I'll be talking about some ML, I'll be talking about some Gen AI and LLM. It's worth noting, obviously, that there's sort of different tiers and different things within the landscape of AI. I know AI is readily talked about at length. Please know that when I talk about AI, I'm going to be quite clear about what's supervised, what's unsupervised, what's an LLM, what's real and what's not real as well. I think it's also worth noting that there's sort of always a time and a place for machines. And for me, it's about the fact that like machines are going to really help us out with collection, summarization, hypothesis testing. But in terms of knowing your own environment and having an ethical approach and being able to find the relationships or find whoever you need to find within other teams to fix a specific issue, that's where humans are still needed. And so I think all of us need to look for what balance, as we adopt AI moving forward, is going to get the best out of AI, but also the best out of our own people as we look to rebuild people and processes with AI technology. Now, any conversation of AI, there's always risks, there's always going to be challenges of validation. I love this. This is a little picture of, this is the famous portrait of Rene Descartes. He's the I think, therefore I am guy. Adobe Creative Generator was asked to fill in the rest of the portrait. This is what it came up with. Clearly, AI sometimes can go amok. The reason why I bring this up is because AI can sometimes have a black box problem of vendors not necessarily sharing the reference architecture of how they've built their particular LLMs or their particular ML or whatever it might be. I'm a big believer in let's open up that box, but let's also within the process, let's show the workings out. Let's show the modeling, let's show the weightings, let's show the scorings, let's show the evidence often. Of course, a safe reference architecture does guardrail against misuse, guardrails against attacks on that LLM, but also guardrails against hallucination. Up on the screen here, specifically, I've got the reference architecture of Sentinel-1's security assistant, Purple AI. I'm not going to go into too much detail now, but it's worth noting that that RAG architecture is going to really help you, but you need to safeguard your data as well. You need to ensure that as you adopt any AI solution, that your data isn't being used to train everyone else's models. There needs to be a separate source of intelligence and brilliance and sort of security excellence separate to your telemetry that's being used. It needs to be about like what lessons are learned and what does good security look like, and a knowledge base and sort of and threat intelligence that's leveraged, but your own queryable telemetry stays within your own environment and isn't used anywhere else. I think that's just incredibly important. But let's get started. First of the three that I wanted to chat about, autonomous enterprise protection. And this is really just ensuring that there's AI-powered, proactive, and reactive controls to secure environments. And by that, I mean endpoints, cloud environments, container environments, and both human and non-human machine identities. As an example of what I mean by autonomous enterprise protection for these environments, I mean pre-execution models and real-time models. Supervised learnt models that know what bad looks like, right? That can do file inspection, that can look at the chaos within a file, to perform an opcode histogram and make a decision before something is even engaged with about whether that's bad or not, as well as unsupervised ML that's going to get better and better over time that takes into account things like behavior and time of like what's happening. I see so often a curl and get are used a bunch maliciously. That's not necessarily something that I want to stop every single time it happens. But if I see curl used to access a set of tools from a Chinese hosting site and then bash being performed, or even without the bash, like, I've got some events linked that I would like my unsupervised ML to pick up in real time and to take an action. Actually, before I continue, it's also worth ensuring that there's no dependence on predefined conditions. So often within cloud security, especially, I see a lot of predefined conditions, and it means that when tactics evolve, these then fail. Specifically within ransomware, the way in which Linux ransomware has developed within the last 24 months means that if you're leveraging predefined conditions, you're going to have a bad time, essentially. I talked a little bit about validation in terms of validating the model. I think there's another opportunity within proactive health to use AI to get the evidence that we need to validate risk. I won't talk about this for too long, but something that we do here at SentinelOne within cloud security is we obviously map what's misconfigured, what's vulnerable, what has a pathway out to the internet. We actually then dynamically generate a defanged attack with our offensive security engine. The whole point of that is that it generates, hey, this is what an exploit would look like that any non-blocklisted IP could run against this specific part of the environment. And it actually captures, and here's what happened, which I like to think of as kind of like, this is a so what artifact that I've been able to validate that it's not a theoretical risk I'm talking about anymore. I've been able to use this engine in this case, but I think there's massive opportunity for AI to develop all sorts of validation of threats, even outside of cloud, to look at here's what could happen, here's what's real, essentially. And that validation allows you to really then key in on what risk is real, what's the impact. Because so often I know a lot of collaboration between teams breaks down because they disagree on, is that important? Do we need to fix that? If you're able to have a screenshot to say like, hey, this is what's possible from the outside. Let's fix this before lunch. By the way, this is the package. This is the layer. This is exactly where it is. Here is the infrastructure as code I need you to fix, or here are the container images, all I need you to do is bump up the underlying, Alpine OS. Like, if we can have those conversations, we're going to get better collaboration. And I think AI is a real opportunity to have proactive validation and health to foster collaboration, especially between cloud teams and development teams, but within all teams. Autonomous enterprise protection aside, let's talk about solving the data problem. There was a really interesting recent IDC report that said that perhaps unsurprisingly, there's a massive number of alerts that aren't even investigated. I think it's sort of well understood that traditional approaches to SIEM are woefully unprepared for the complexity of modern architecture, but also the complexity of modern attacks. I often hear about companies that are struggling to ingest all the different sources that they have, that they're actually making choices of, hey, we can't store everything because of costs, so we're not going to look at this and this and this. Of course, evolving and sophisticated tactics are quite hard to discern, especially if you're doing manual analysis in your SIEM, if you're doing your own pattern creation. And so I think there's a real opportunity for what's called the AI SIEM. Now, this is something that SentinelOne is a leader in, but there's a bunch of people that are doing really cool work in this space. And I think it's all about, how do you supercharge your SIEM with AI? How can you ingest your whole ecosystem? How can you be intelligent and an attacker aware so that, you're leveraging the best possible threat feed, and you've got AI around that then looks at your environment so that you get that real-time holistic sort of improved view, I should say. And then you've then got AI detection, rule creation on top of that, and then if at all possible, automated workflows as well. There's a really interesting report recently put out via Cloud Security Alliance about what's often slowing down response times and remediation. And it's so often about like finding the right person. If we're able to use first AI detection to find things quicker and to correlate things more quickly, AI to validate why and what went wrong, and then from an observability process, if we can use summarization that is possible within AI and automated tagging to more quickly find, hey, this is what person changed where. We now need them to make X fix for remediating this specific threat. I think we've got a game-changing approach. This is a little bit more ahead of the curve, the ability for real-time observability to engage with an AI SIEM like that, but I love the potential ahead. And then lastly was autonomous threat analysis and assistance. And that's where we get to, hey, if you've got an AI SIEM, let's run some Gen AI and LLMs over the top of that. Let's have a security analyst where I can, with natural language, query all of my security telemetry. How many of my EC2s had bash in the last 72 hours? Plain language. And then for them to translate back into structured queries if I've got repeated use cases. Accelerated threat hunting, making sure that there's security analysts that are able to say, here's where we think you should go next with your hunt. Here's everything that you have hunted so far, which is so important when we're reporting upwards, I know, because it can take a lot of time to be like, hey, I did X, Y, and Z. This is dangerous. The reason why it's dangerous is this. Here's what I did. For that to be worked alongside you and accelerated and done via an AI security analyst, amazing. And then obviously to use that to integrate with your workflows to, be able to combine that threat intel and AI SIEM that I was talking about. From SentinelOne, this is something that we do already in the field. Like, this isn't me looking at the future. This is, we've got something called Purple AI, which is our security analyst, which is I love and I get a real kick out of every day. But I just wanted to sort of mention that this isn't looking to the future. This is what is now. But if we do look into the future, I do want to talk about what the end goal of this SOC revolution is with AI. And I'll use, sort of inspired by the autonomous driving levels, is I think right now, or historically, we've been moving away from manual to rule-based to AI and ML assisted security, and now having AI assistants that are going to accelerate, streamline, assist. In the incredibly near future, we're going to move to limited autonomy, where we've got detections based on the LLM, new detection logic created, agentic approaches to investigation. So some investigations being automated by the security analyst, and then a more interesting development of the relationship between human and AI for what AI shouldn't completely have. And then full autonomy is obviously further still away, but that's an evolution of what's possible through the sort of agentic approach. And by that, I mean, often a lot of AI analysts currently are about like, yeah, can you complete this code? Can you summarize this alert? Can you look at what I've done previously and can you turn that into detection code? Whereas a more agentic approach is going to be about like, hey, I want you to teach yourself, and then I want you to start taking actions. To have a model that self-updates, self-learns, and that takes actions, that has its own memory, for example, which is just a really cool, incredibly near future for all of us. SentinelOne, we're doing a lot in agentic AI security just around the corner, as well as everything that I've currently already talked about with Purple AI. Anyway, I want to wrap up. I know I've thrown a lot at you guys. All I kind of really want to get to is I think that we've got an opportunity to flip the scripts and not be overwhelmed by noise, but adopt AI for those 3 use cases of autonomous enterprise protection, solving the data problem, and then autonomous assistance to be accelerated and to start autonomously achieving the security goals we want. And if we do that, we're going to be able to rebalance the SOC. We're going to be able to have all of the things that we want to do. We're still going to have complexity, but we can potentially reduce security complexity and have some consolidation possible. And that's really the evolution that I love talking about, is like, let's move away from signatures, really, if we're still there. I know a lot of people have been moved on to cloud-based monitoring, but in terms of like AI on device, AI in cloud, these 3 things that I've been talking about, I really do see this as the future for our SOCs. And it's a future that SentinelOne's really excited to be building alongside all of our partners and all of our customers. With that, I'd like to thank you, my audience. Hopefully this has been a worthwhile session. Thank you for your time and attention. Once again, I've been Chris Hosking from SentinelOne, and I've got my email here. So if you want to reach out and tell me, Chris, I think you're wrong for X and Y reasons, or Chris, I want to see this for X and L reasons, love to hear from you guys. Thank you very much for your time again.